Forbes India CNBC-TV18 presents Smart Manufacturing powered by Rockwell Automation.
Hello and welcome. You are watching us here on this special webcast where we're discussing smart manufacturing as the big driver of the India growth story. And we've put together for you an elite, extremely elite panel of experts who will talk about this. They are, they're the forefathers of the pioneers, if you must, as far as the CPG industry is concerned. And in that, smart manufacturing driving the India growth story is what we are going to talk about. So we start with, welcoming our guests. We have Mr. B. Ganesh Shenoy, who's the CFO, Head IT Solutions, MTR Foods Pvt Limited. We all have heard of MTR. We all have consumed their products as well. Avinash Kumar Kant, who's the President, Integrated Supply Chain at Jubilant FoodWorks as well, joins in. Jubilant FoodWorks, you would know it better as the company that owns and operates the brand Domino's in India. So if you've ever ordered a pizza and it's come to you in about 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes as they promised, you have Avinash and his team to thank you for that because they handle the supply chain out there. Pramod Prasad, who's the COO at Godrej Jersey as well. If you're joining in from the southern part of the country, you would know them as big players in the dairy and curd industry in particular, as Godrej Jersey operates in those segments. And then you have Arvind Kakru, the director at Rockwell Automation India as well. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for joining in. Hope you have a good day. Importantly, the last couple of years have changed the way consumers think. They've changed the way companies think, and they've changed the way consumers interact with companies, the way companies get their products, not only to the factories, but to the marketplace, to the consumers as well. So let's start with asking Ganesh this question. In the past couple of years, if you must, posed numerous challenges. The consumer packaged industry not only mitigated the risks, actually was among the few industries that thrived amid the disruptions and actually sought opportunities for growth. As we move towards a post-pandemic world, what are your thoughts into what this sector is likely to evolve into?
Yeah, thank you, Mangalam. I think you said it right when you said that there was a crisis, and we all know, and we've heard this dictum that every crisis, there is also an opportunity behind it. I think the pandemic really helped us realize this dictum in many ways, in many businesses. Every business has a portfolio, right? I mean, you have different product categories that really form a business portfolio. And we found during the pandemic that parts of the portfolio grew, parts of the portfolio declined too. And overall, we had almost a 15% growth in our top line. And the bottom line, hold your breath, moved by 40%.
Wow.
And how did this happen? This happened because of just 4 key things, which I'm sure every business you will talk to will also talk about. You focus on your portfolio and you rationalize your portfolio. Because what happens in a severe disruptive market scenario like the pandemic, where your supply chains are completely disrupted, your back end is in a state of confusion, uncertainty, if I may say so, and your front end, because of its various safety and health issues, also needs to be guided through. They need to be chaperoned into, basically guiding them in terms of what to focus on. And I think portfolio rationalization really helped us scale down the complexity of our business portfolio. From something like 250 plus SKUs, we came down to just about 80 SKUs. And it is so important here again, the famous rule of 80-20 really played out, all over again. And I would say it reflected in a sharper focus on the core of our business. And mere focus on the core is not adequate. You also need to back it up by a very strong digital platform, because all of us know that during the pandemic, because of the disrupted market scenario, you also had to keep health at the center stage, because employees could not really move around in the marketplace as frequently or as intensive as we would have liked. So we moved to what is called a contactless selling platform. We also had handheld platforms whereby orders were placed through these handheld devices, and the dispatch information used to go, to the stockists, and between the stockists and the retailers again, we deployed the Botry platform-based billing systems. And I would also say a couple of other things which really helped us and which is equally important is automated workflows, because again, all this happened during the pandemic, during the first wave of pandemic, and that is really full credit to the team, the sales and marketing team, the IT teams, which really conceptualized what were the workflows that were really required to enable the front end teams to therefore meet the market opportunity, because you had different kinds of promotion proposals coming in through paperless, and we used the tagline anytime, anywhere, any device, through which approvals were given, and the front end teams were therefore empowered to take these decisions on the fly in the markets. And I'll stop by talking about just one more thing. What it really taught us, this entire thing about portfolio rationalization, focusing on core and the digital platform, is it taught us that collaboration is the only way forward. Whether it is the pandemic or without the pandemic, collaborative spirit is perhaps the soul of any business. And this is something which we should preserve and really leverage and take it to greater heights. Once the collaborative spirit is embedded and you empower these teams, I think you will unleash the power of the entrepreneurial mindset, because a TSC, the lowest level of the hierarchy, what is he? He's but an entrepreneur, because he's actually leveraging those opportunities out there in the market.
Yes, Mr. Shenoy, you echoed the sentiment of the entire panel, I think, when you said about how you guys actually focused on the core, you focused on the businesses that were actually doing well, and shifted focus away from that was not important. I've heard multiple stories from companies across the consumer space, and not just the consumer space, the other verticals as well, where they were just focusing on products that were turning over the fastest and rationalize their entire supply chain, their entire core of the business around those high turnover products itself, the meat, the 80% of the bell, so to say. So let's go across to Pramod then. Pramod, with evolving consumer behavior, buying habits, for companies like you, what were the kind of investments that you had to make in digital analytics, automation, so to say? What's your digital strategy been over the last few years, and what's the outlook there?
Right. So if you look at dairy, right? So dairy has its own separate supply chain, and dairy being, an essential commodity, I don't think even a single day anyone stopped their operations, right? The entire value chain was up and running despite any lockdown, any place. So that way, that supply chain kept on running. So there was no disruption, to so to speak, from that point of view. But having said that, the consumer behaviors changed. So the dairy has two sets of consumers, right? So one is the household consumer, the other is in terms of the horeca, which is your the offices, the restaurants, all of them. So the household consumer, there we saw a bit of a growth. A horeca segment, it was almost it kind of crashed big time. The household consumer, a large part of the household consumer, especially let's say in Hyderabad, 30% get their milk delivered to their home. The rest kind of go and buy from the nearby shop. So there we saw a bit of an online, people moving to online platforms, and our e-commerce channel sales kind of grew. So we had to reorient and work with some of these channel partners, and that kind of gave us the necessary focus to work with these partners to build that channel for us, and that is one channel that has grown almost we've doubled the specific channel. The second is at a very business level, right? Because the Horeca kind of took a bit of a hit. We also made a lot of investments to build our value-added portfolio, and through the couple both the pandemic years, our value-added portfolio kind of grew, right? So there was no degrowth and grew in double digits through that period. So in this, what we realized, and our digital journey was one, of course, on the consumer side in terms of being well integrated with these e-commerce channels, different partners. So I think both in terms of our people capability and also in terms of technology capability, we had to upskill there. And second, even on the manufacturing side, because in dairy, the supply chain is a larger part. So we took about digitization at every level, and bring give better visualization to our people so that they can start taking faster decisions, right? So that's been our investment or strategy over the last couple of years, right? To digitize whatever we can, then ensure the right people see it, which is about visualize. And now we are getting into that phase where we start taking actions basis some of those analytics that we kind of get. So that's been our digital strategy for the last couple of years.
Well, interesting there. You first digitize, visualize, and perhaps then after that, you would channelize as well. Avinash, everyone expected, good sort of delivery, safe delivery during the pandemic, etc. Domino's actually took the lead by bringing about contactless delivery. If I remember correctly, you were the first QSRs to actually go ahead and bring the word contactless into everyone's lexicon. But now that things are opening up, what are the customer expectations in the new normal in terms of, could it be increased push for traceability, increased need for any sort of outbreak prevention? Because COVID is one, everyone's talking about bird flu, etc. as well. You guys have a lot of chicken in your pizzas, changing buying patterns. Any sort of thoughts that you think a deep dive into consumer expectations, so to say?
Yeah, Mangalam. So two changes are very distinct, pre-COVID to post-COVID. One change is that there is a lot of health and hygiene orientation that the consumers have today compared to the pre-COVID times. That reflects in various preferences and priorities in terms of freshness, in terms of no contact, in terms of traceability, in terms of the health part of it, or nutrition part of it, right? There's a lot to do with the product that they are preferring and how to consume that. The second trend is, which started during the COVID time, was about the whole area of convenience. That how do we make the consumption much more convenient? And you saw that the delivery part went up very significantly for the restaurant industry as a whole. And people had a lot more consumption at home. Bill values were larger. Family meals were there compared to pre-COVID times. And that trend continues. We see that while the dining is returning back, still there is a huge shift towards delivery overall compared to the pre-COVID days. Of course, while these two major trends have been there, there's a lot more preference for customization on one side, and there's a lot of preference for branded players over the unorganized sector. Because of the trust that the customers repose in the branded established players. So we see a shift certainly in the restaurant industry towards organized sector of late compared to the pre-COVID times.
All right. So now that everyone's talking about post-COVID behavior, which basically emanates from pre-COVID sort of habits, but with post-COVID expectations of highly digital, more convenient, extremely hygienic, and at consumers' fingertips, if you must, with a lot more data analytics and automation that we're talking about. So, Arvind, what is the potential for companies to use this data and leverage it beyond just forecasting or retailing, and maybe something like demand fulfillment, maybe beyond the obvious that we know? How else can these companies leverage data analytics?
That's a very valid question, and I think there are a lot of things that would go around manufacturing. For example, let's talk in general. When it comes to industrial Internet of Things or analytics, there's boundless opportunity. More than most companies can fund or manage. So it's key to prioritize those opportunities and applications that will help realize early returns of investments, while creating the right foundation for long-term growth and success. I think the key areas would be, for example, to focus on, beyond what you kind of said, assets and operations would be definitely very critical, because management and control of equipment and systems within a given operating environment is really, really critical for this industry in particular, and many other industries in general. There should be a focus on resources and environment, which is how you kind of conduct the operations as well as manage the systems and the environment overall. So that is really important. People and processes is one more factor that is really critical here, which is dealing with the workforce or impact of the operators or skilled technicians and support of personnel, etc., on operations, etc. That's really critical. Material and supply chain is again a very critical factor, which is focused on possibly, I'm just talking about the information piece of it and the resources involved in providing the raw materials and components required, for example, in production. And then finally, you look at the enterprise integration, you look at the measurable outcomes, so what are the things, that are really critical, for this kind of industries. And, basically the whole theme in the premise is with advanced analytics, companies can drive actionable insights from data that is coming from multiple internal and external sources. I'll give you a few examples in terms of how this can be leveraged, especially in CPG or food and beverage industry. For example, you can measure and explore current and historical performance, right? You can explain trends, root causes, and relationships, and correlations. You can predict future, and you can get into foresights, that will give you some good insights into what was happening in the past, what corrective actions you need to take, into action, and what all measurements you need to have in place, and what all correlations you make accordingly, and make necessary course corrections. You also look at prescribing, say, evidence-based recommendation to improve the future outcomes. Overall, automate the whole actions, based on learning rules, so that the whole processes become efficient and you are able to derive some business benefit out of it.
So let's talk business. Let's talk individual, instances. Let's talk examples. Then, Arvind, if you could tell us, a few use cases that can be deployed to actually improve the productivity and efficiency of the plants. Tell us something that you have done, and tell us, give us some live examples.
Okay. So, for example, there are multiple things. I'll talk about a few, that possibly have a good impact. And I'm saying all of these basically get into business impact in some shape or form. And I'll try to give you some quantification, but that is just generally for an idea. Say, for example, we look at demand-driven production, which is like adapting to shifting the market demands, which is scalable, which is flexible, in line with demands, going up or down at some point of time. So this basically reduces the changeover time, increases the number of products launched, and increases the forecasting accuracy to a very large extent, and which is very critical, especially in food and beverage industries with, I would say, multiple diversified product lines. That becomes very, very critical that time, because the volume of each of those product lines is small and not very great. It possibly will help to some extent on the larger single, brand driven kind of company, but applicable for a lot of more diversified companies. Streamlined quality and compliance is again one more thing that is very critical, wherein you kind of outperform the quality and compliance standards with the real-time process control. This gives you a single-digit increase in the throughput, which is huge, because the margins in especially food and beverage industries are again very competitive, and there's not much to play around, which also benefits in terms of reduction of the downtime, machine downtime, lowering of the power consumption, etc. Those are again big benefits, that actually come from quantification piece. There is element of data knowledge driven efficiency, which is more to maximize the operational efficiency, which is improvement, which results in improvement of OE, for example, by adding hours of operation on existing machines, results in a better mix time, significantly increased units are produced in one shift, and so on. And then finally, I would say one more example that is critical is risk management and secure operations, which is like protecting the environment or the assets against a broad array of threats, with an integrated information technology and operational technology security approach, which is results in a much more simple operations, at the same point of time very compliant and safe, and also reduces off spec process or production, overall, which is a large benefit, and quality rejects are very, very minimal in that case, and the stock turnaround is also very high.
Well, that's phenomenal. That brings me back to a question to Mr. Shenoy. Mr. Shenoy, you said that there were a lot of strategies that you had to implement during that time for your company to become a lot more leaner, cleaner, and meaner, if you must, in the market space. What strategies do you think can be implemented for successful digital transformation? That's point number one. A more important point is that how digitally transformed is your organization? Can you give us an example of the strategies that really work for you?
Before the pandemic, we took one of the manufacturing plants as a pilot, which was a reasonably, I would say, a process-based plant, in the sense we had raw materials, and then obviously there's a lot of processing, and then you have the finished goods coming out. We implemented manufacturing digitization dashboard and connected up. I would say it is possibly a low-level Internet of Things kind of initiative. Every single machine in the process was tapped to pick up data and the various analytics that the machine threw out. And we implemented what is called a short interval control mechanism. Normally, what happens is, in a manufacturing plant, you tend to look at things in a month or a week or a day or a shift. But here is a case where this particular dashboard threw up deviations maybe every single minute, but every single minute need not be monitored. So we chose to look at a hourly kind of a monitoring mechanism. And believe me, all that Arvind talked about in terms of, I would say, rework, in terms of rejections, in terms of better yields, and in terms of better consistency in quality and throughput, all of them we were able to realize. We have already started rolling this out into the other plants. We have 7 plants. We've already restarted this initiative from February, and we will perhaps roll this out in every single plant.
Pramod, what do you think are the biggest challenges for CPG manufacturers with digital transformation? Because while it all sounds hunky-dory, it all sounds, there is a fair amount of efficiency that it brings in. There is cost efficiency, there is revenue predictability, there's basically optimization of resources, etc. But I'm sure it comes with its own set of challenges. What do you think, in your experience so far, have been the challenges?
So I think to start with, right, so first is that the expectation versus actual. And now whatever you said, right, be it from a manufacturing point of view, the business impact is either in quality, safety, or efficiency, right? So broadly you get into these 3 buckets. Now the idea is that, translating that English into numbers, and more importantly saying that this is the expectation and delivering on that expectation. And I think there is a bit of a gulf in terms of when this kind of happens. Second is seeing this as a technology problem. It is not a technology problem. It's a business problem. Now, the point is that whatever you're doing, how is that making a life easy for the person on the shop floor, right? If you answer that question and if you make that job easy for that person is going to adopt it. You don't have to force him to adopt it. And there you have a digital option, right? And I think thinking through this change management, setting the right expectation, and then, thinking through this change management, I think these are the 2 key challenges, in terms of when we set on this journey of digital transformation. So I think those are the key challenges you must address at the ideation stage itself, and then, iterate many times and involve everyone in this.
Avinash, about 2 to 3 quarters ago, we did hear of an instance of some sort of data breach taking place on the Domino's apps, the Domino's website, etc. as well. So the cyber landscape, what does it look like right now? Because the more companies are getting digitized, the more companies are, deploying these strategies. It's also bringing with itself an important need, an increased need for cyber security. What measures have you taken in terms of your company's cyber security plan?
Yeah, good question, Mangalam. So first of all, no, we were fortunate that no sensitive data got leaked as
Yes,
such,
that's correct.
and the damage was controlled, right? It didn't go out of control. But the kind of data that all companies are gathering now from consumers at all touch points, at all consumption points, there is a lot of sensitive data coming in, and that data is a lot about privacy and can have serious repercussions if falling into wrong hands. And of course, there's a bunch of players who are out there trying to get that data, trying to harp on any leakages, any weak points, linkages in the system. So companies are growing a lot more sensitive. I think there's a large ecosystem evolving about cybersecurity, and companies are working proactively to ensure that the data is secure, the data is not all at one place, and I can assure you that companies like ours are taking it very, very seriously and working on it very proactively. The other thing is that the legal framework is also getting strengthened, and we saw at that time also that the support available from the government machinery also is much more proactive and prompt, and that should also act as a deterrent in future for these kind of instances.
That brings me to the question to Arvind. Arvind, what does the future of manufacturing of consumer packaged goods look like? Or let me rephrase it. What does the digital future of manufacturing consumer packaged goods look like? Because here we're talking about minutes, saving every minute.
Sure. I think there would be possibly two major areas for companies to focus on. There would be digital tools to lean transformations and using advanced analytics to optimize the specific manufacturing processes as such. I think it starts from just automating all of the processes and having tools and devices to measure all kind of data and assets, getting that into basically an edge device or onto cloud, building dashboards and detecting performance gaps, comparing metrics, by product, factory location, manufacturing hub, region, etc. Depending upon the complexity of the operations, of the particular company, and easily access that historical performance data or information on specific operational topics, such as breakdown of overall equipment efficiency, OE, by particular category or product line and things like that, right? So I think those are the key things, from a digital kind of impact or future point of view. AR is very critical from work orders, maintenance, training, related to improvement of productivity and increasing the speed of operations, or improving even the communications and training, etc. And then ultimately you have to get into the connected enterprise, which is very critical for companies to put together all the processes in place, connect all the data assets together, and then make business sense out of it. So I would say, in short, end-to-end visibility, accelerating product time to market, reducing of defects, quality matter, reducing of scrap, downtime, rework, recalls also in some cases. One more thing I just did not mention before is it also helps quite a lot when you have a connected data enterprise or a enterprise-wide digital strategy. It reduces your compliance, regulatory, and quality risk, which in this kind of industry is really critical. So finally, I would say also go-to-market or internal product development resource capacity also increases quite a bit over the years.
On that note, I'd like to thank everyone, Avinash, Arvind, Mr. Shenoy, as well as Pramod, for joining in and giving us such beautiful insights into what the future of manufacturing, what the future of consumer goods, and what the future of consumer products itself could look like. Thank you for this enriching conversation.
Forbes India, CNBC-TV18 presents Smart Manufacturing, powered by Rockwell Automation.